Good evening, everyone. Pastor Wil Nichols here. I'm excited about our presentation tonight. We have some powerful men of God, subject matter experts that are going to help us through this, looking at coronavirus Jesus, COVID-19 Jesus. To those of you who don't know what that's all about, every time I say COVID-19, I followed up with Jesus, because every knee got to bow at the name of Jesus. Every tongue must confess that Jesus is Lord. So we thank you all for joining us on tonight to talk about our money, to talk about our finances. Let me first open with prayer. And Father, in the name of Jesus, God, we thank you and we praise you, because you said that men ought always to pray and not faint. So we thank you, Lord, for the people of God who have come on to learn. You said, God, that my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And so, God, we've chosen to be informed rather than to be ignorant, to have knowledge, to operate in faith rather than fear. And Lord, to operate even in this time where we can't gather together in obedience rather than defiance. And so, Lord, we ask, Lord, that your spirit will move here on tonight, that you will be a blessing to us. Bless the speakers and the presenters, that they will give us knowledge, Lord, that will empower us for this season, for this time, as it relates to our money and our finances. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank God. Amen. So we thank God for you all. I'm going to ask our presenters to introduce themselves. I'm going to give you their bio a little bit later, but we're going to start with each of presenters. Belton, we're going to start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and each of the presenters, if you will do that for me.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Belton, Monroe. I've been a member here at church about 17 years. Came here as a very early family, a young family. My wife and my, at that time, first daughter, who is now about to be 17. And we've been married 18 years, and two more children later is three children now. So I'm occupied right now with being a father and a husband. And I joking the other day that we spread our kids out pretty far, where I'm dealing with one learning how to get their driver's license, and the other one is I'm taking the training wheels off all in the same week. so I'm gonna hit a wide gamut of things here today. And lastly, I'm most interested in the personal part of finance, the personal finance part, where when I was growing up, I always had an affinity for numbers and the money part of it. But as I got married and started being an adult, I quickly realized that 80% of what you do is more behavior and more personal, and it's more about what you do with what the money you have as opposed to how much money you get. So I look forward to talking about those softer relational type things as we go through this today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Belton. Thurman Green.
Hello, my name is Thurman Green. I've been with the church, what was it, 22 years, 21, 22 years?
He's been with us 22 years minus 1 month. They were my first members that joined after the original crew.
Yeah, me and my wife's been there. One thing, we've been in North Carolina here for now about 26 years. One thing about the finance, I got into finance when I was stationed in Germany. I went to a seminar and I heard them talk about the things you can do. And for some reason, the light just clicked on my brain. Why should I listen to y'all when I can do all this stuff myself? But since then, I've been studying, learning the ins and outs about personal finance. I like teaching the finance because it's something that every person needs to know. I know a lot of folks wasn't taught this information when they was growing up. So I'm just excited to get into it, following the Dave Ramsey principles.
All right, thank you, Thurman. And our final presenter is Omar Smith. Omar, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
So thank you all for bringing me here today. Name's Omar Smith. I'm in banking. Been in banking almost 13 years. And I've worked for, some Fortune 500 companies, Wells Fargo, Chase. Now I'm with SunTrust Truist, which is the 6th largest bank in the US. For me, my personal interest is more surrounded around credit and budgeting. And this was a personal walk for me, which started back in 2009 when we had that major financial crisis. And, you know, like Deacon Green, as much as I'm educated with a master's degree, I never learned this part of credit and budgeting in school. And so when the economy tanked out and, you know, my personal budget started to be affected negatively, you know, I started to turn to resources and personally walk myself through it. My credit score, you know, was way less than 500. I can tell you that back in 2009. And in 2017, when I bought a house, my lowest credit score was 750. I didn't file for bankruptcy, didn't get anybody to represent me. I found information on the internet and I used that to my advantage. So, you know, I'm here to share, you know, how credit can impact your lives.
All right, so thank you, gentlemen. And I don't take credit for this first slide of the presentation that you all are about to see. That's this crew right here, as you can tell. And so they are an interesting group, as you can see. So how do you handle your money during a crisis, especially this one? Even the president, Franklin, got to have on the mask. So we thank God for these gentlemen here, and we're going to have a great discussion. Those that are coming on later, we want you to remain muted. If you have questions, please put them in the chat room, and we will be able to respond to your questions after we've heard from each of our presenters. So we're going to start with Belton Monroe. Belton is a graduated summa cum laude from Fayetteville State University with a Bachelor of Science, Computer Science degree and a minor in mathematics. He was awarded the FSU Pioneer in Computer Science Award and FSU School of Business and Economics Community Service Award. Belton obtained a Master's of Business Administration, MBA, with a concentration of Innovation Management at North Carolina State University. He has received several awards in his professional career, including a patent from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Belton currently is a principal architect at Fidelity Investments, where he designs software solutions that supports the financial advisory industry. Belton has been happily married for 18 years with 3 children. Belton has enjoyed coordinating several Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University classes at Victoria Spray's Fellowship. He is passionate about educating people on how to successfully manage the personal components of personal finance. All right, Belton.
All right, thank you very much. So like Pastor said, my passion is around the personal part. So what you're about to see, the first part here is based on Financial Peace University, as Deacon Green said, is that we co-coordinated several courses since 2014. Some of you may have actually went through them, so this may be a refresher or a reminder. But we want to first talk about what to do if your income is stable. And we're going to get to the other components of if it's not stable and also the credit in just a little bit. But the first do that you want to do is if you're familiar with the baby steps, don't worry about it if you're not. I'm going to go over those really briefly in the next slide. But the first thing is you continue to work on your baby steps like you have been. And that means if you're stable, you don't go be an ostrich and go stick your head in the ground, or just because you see someone falling or someone around you get laid off, you don't want to panic and get in fear mode. We're like, okay, let's evaluate my situation and how stable is my job. And another thing I want to say here is that in the longer grand scheme of things, maybe it's not like 40 years ago when you had your parents where they would work on a job for 30, 40 years and then retire and get to go and watch. But it's not really around job security. I like to say it's career security. Around you need to stay proficient in your job technically or new trends in your industry. So if you voluntarily need to change jobs or if you actually leave jobs, you still could have a cushion to fall softly or be able to support yourself in between the time. So I just want to talk about that in the first bullet. The second bullet, do continue to pay your bills on time. It's not a free pass to skip out. It's like, okay, nobody's paying attention, they take a hand off the wheel, we could get kind of sloppy here. So I want to implore you to continue to be diligent. If your income is still coming in, there's no reason for you not to pay your obligations. That's just a thing of being honest and being morality, to tell the truth in my eyes. Okay, coming up, next thing is if you're getting stimulus money, take that and put that towards your next priority, which you're going to see once again in the next slide. It depends on where you are in the baby steps on where your priorities is. It might be you're trying to build a emergency fund, or it might be you're trying to pay off debt, or it might be you're trying to invest. Once again, I'm getting more in that in the next slide. Do not pause your debt snowball. That's a concept of where you take the lowest balance on your balance on your debt, and pay that, throw as much money as that as you can, where you pay the minimum amount on the rest of them, and really don't pay too much attention to interest rate. It's more about getting that momentum behind you, where you want to see small victories, and they call it snowball, because you take that money and roll on to the next. The next thing is this is a very important one, do not cash out your 401k. This should be your last resort. Thurman is going to talk a little bit more about that later, but this should be your very, very last resort. You should not be going straight in and cashing out your 401k. And I'm going to tell you why in a second also, because if you have your foundation set up in the right priority order, that's not your first go-to. If that money is meant to stay there and grow and be with you when it's time to retire decades down the road, depending on how old you are right now. Second to last, your student loans. Do not defer your student loans if your income, once again, this is if your income is stable and you don't see in the foreseeable future something drastically changing. Keep attacking that with a vengeance. Another thing here is you might hear this word thrown around called forbearance. Not only in the context of student loans, but you also might hear it in the context of mortgage, which is the next bullet, or any debt, say forbearance. But want to be clear here, forbearance is not forgiveness. It just means, okay, say for example, we'll forbear your payments for 3 months. So in August timeframe, you have to pay all of that, but you should have been paying the whole time you should have been paying it regularly. So once again, if you're in dire straits, you have to work with what you got. But if you have steady income, don't put yourself behind the 8 ball because you think something's going to happen. Or once again, you might come into a situation where if you know you can't trust yourself with that, you might try to fool yourself. Oh, I'm going to put this in the bank, set to the side, and in August we're going to pay it up just in case. But how many times have you just in case put some money on the side and you saw a new pair of shoes, or you saw you just had to get another car, or your family member come ask for your money. So we're going to get that in a second too. But that's the second last thing. The last thing here I already touched on is continue to pay your mortgage on time. Don't use this as, once again, as an example of being able to you hamstring yourself and put yourself behind the 8 ball. Thank you. So we talked about the Financial Peace University 7 baby steps. I'm going to go over this fairly quickly, but this comes from the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University curriculum, where right now you have multiple ways you can do this. You can do it when everyone could go to church or whatever venue. You can come physically and go for a 7 or 9 week class, depending on the format you do. But now I just want to make sure that everyone knows that if you go to financialpeaceuniversity.com or just Google Dave Ramsey or FPU, they actually have a program where it's 2 14-day free trial. You get all this information for free, and you can zoom through it in 14 days and have no obligation at the end of that 14 days. If you want to pay for it, keep going, so be it. But that is the first time they ever did this. But just want to start at baby step number 1, but actually it should be a baby step number 0. This is where you get you evaluate your inflow and your outflow, where you say if you have X amount of dollars coming in, if you have X amount plus $300 to the negative, you need to figure out how to make that balance up. Preferably, you have more money left over. So that's step number 1, to say, okay, this is how much coming in, this is how much going out, this is what I could cut to get it in line. Because if you're every month you're coming in behind. By the end of the year, you're going to be more behind. And at the end of the decade, you're going to be a lot behind. So this simple things up front there. And also want to touch on a relational thing, where that if you're married or about to get married, you need to have this discussion about how you want to handle and communicate. So, and I just had a lot of discussions over the last few months around people have the concept of mine and his bill and their bill. And I hate to say it, in these times we are in right now, I don't think that hold water. If you got your part of the light bill and your husband don't have his part of the light bill, both of you are going to be in the dark. So it's not that he and mine and they, it's our bill. So let's get in that one frame of mind that everyone's going to pull in the same direction. We could get into details and the minutia of one account, 3 accounts. That's not even the point. It's the principle behind it, that we're all on the same page, and we're going to bear up the other person where they're weak at. So you have the spender and you might have the nerd. It's good to have both. You don't want to have both nerds because you have a boring life, and you don't want to have both spenders because you'll be broke. So you need to play off each other. And starting out, I was a heavy nerd, and my wife was a spender, and now it kind of reversed. I have to sometimes tell her, go ahead and buy that. We got it in the budget, go ahead and do it. Or I like to say spending plan. So you need that balance, and it rubs off on you. So so let me get into step number 1. I talked too much about step 0, which is not even on there. Step 1 is the $1,000 emergency fund. That's where after you got your inflows and things set up, and also foundational things like insurance and wills and life insurance, medical insurance, all that is foundational step 0 also. But then say, okay, we got this and that in order. We want to put, if you don't have it already, $1,000 emergency fund up fast as possible. You got to sell something. It depends on your income. If that's too much, maybe you can start with 500. It's around 5 or 1,000. So then the key here is that you want to stop being behind the 8 ball every time something happens. If the battery goes dead in the car, it's $100 or $200 battery. It shouldn't be the end of the world. Or if you get a flat tire, or if you got kids, all of a sudden they want to have a growth spurt and need new shoes or something. So it shouldn't be this constant fear and consternation in your spirit, like, oh, when is the other shoe going to drop? What's going to happen? And when you get that $1,000, that covers a good portion of most emergencies. So moving to step 2, this is the one a lot of people spend the most time in, is where I was talking about a debt snowball, where you need to go know what you owe and who you owe it to and what the balances are and what all the pertinent information like that. Lay it out. And in the Financial Peace University program, there's a spreadsheet, or you can do it on paper or online. It has all those formats and templates for you to put it on the sheet, and it can project when you will be out of debt, which gives you some momentum to see, oh, okay, I have 10 things I'm paying off, but over the last 3 months, I paid 2 of them off, and you keep rolling that money over, but you were paying. You don't go spend it on something else. You roll it over on the next bill and the next one. So, and just a little bit about me and my family personally, we were able to get out of baby step 2. I want to say it was November 19th of 2008. I'm not taking notes or anything, but it just was a memorable day because I went to Wachovia and paid my last car payment, and I acted a fool in there. I was happy. So I must say we've been out of debt since then, and moving to baby step 3 is where depending on how stable your job is, if you're a single family income or dual, or you need to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. These are the expenses that you calculated back in step 1 and 0 to say, okay, if something happens, that job change I was talking about earlier, or layoffs, I need to have something in the bank. This is set aside, separate, boring in the bank, where if something happens, you can have something sustain you. And I lived through this also. The last 12 years, I've been through 2 layoffs and 1 or 2 voluntary job changes where I must say they were not stressful as they could have been. The first one, yeah, like I said, November of 2008, and I was laid off in May of 2009. So thank God I was prepared for that, as opposed to it was 2 or 3 years ahead of this and of that back then. So when you get those 3 months saved up, this is where you turn your attention to investing for the long term, specifically for retirement. And if you have any other thing you want to do on the side, where you might want to have to save for a house, or you might want to save for a car, all this is where you get to live life a little bit. You try to get through the first one through 3 steps, and you kind of lock down. But it's a sacrifice. So you could, the phrase is, you could live like no one else now. You live like no one else now, so you can live like no one else later. So the turn of phrase where that when you start getting to 4, that's when stuff start getting fun. And personally, again, is that when things start breaking, you might have a bill and you're so used to worrying about stuff, you forget that you need to worry about it. You're like, oh, just go pay it and go. It's a minor interruption in your day, as opposed to all points bullets. We got to figure out how to get this thing turned on and not get it turned off. And then going to step 5 here is funding college, and it's intentionally putting retirement before college, because you need to be able to take care of yourself, and there's no way to, even if you had to take a loan out or make other alternative financial sources, there's none of that for retirement. You need to be able to support yourself in your older age, as well as not be a burden as much as possible on your kids. So that's why baby step 5 is funding colleges after the retirement. And most people end up doing these things simultaneously. So steps 1 through 3 is one at a time, but 4 through 5 is sometimes simultaneously. And then when you get to 6, that's when hopefully I'm looking at some of the folks on here where they got the kids out of high school, out of college. So I'm still dealing with training wheels. So I'm just getting my first one in college next year when she graduates. So I still got 2 more coming up in middle school and elementary school. So it's going to be a while before I get them out. But I'm looking forward to the day of baby step 6, of being able to pay off house and getting these kids out through school. Now I'm looking at Thurman on that one. That's my role model on that one. And then also the very last one is build wealth, give, and give. And once again, you're giving, you're tithing through all of these. But this is the 7, and actually 4 through 7, when you can kick it in a high gear where you have some margin and it's not so tight. So once again, there's only a moment that you need to sacrifice to get through these baby steps. So with that said, I want to turn it over to Thurman, where he's going to talk about if your income is not stable.
Again, before I give you all the bio of Thurman Green, to those of you that have come on since we've gotten started, we want you to remain muted. We certainly appreciate you joining us. There's a little chat room. If you have questions, just present them in the chat because it's too many people for everyone to talk. So I will monitor the questions and ask the questions at the end. So Thurman Green is an experienced and knowledgeable financial advisor. He has a passion to help others understand the principles of personal finance. Thurman earned his civil engineering technology degree from South Carolina State University. He served as an officer in the U.S. Army for 11.5 years. His passion for personal finance began in 1986 while stationed in Germany. There, he began researching and studying personal finance principles. Over the past 20 years, Thurman has taught and advised individuals about personal finance. He uses Dave Ramsey principles. He has served as the church administrator at Victorious Praise Fellowship, where he coordinated and led several Financial Peace University classes. Using the 7 baby step principles can change your life and the way you think about personal finances. As a finance advisor, Thurman's main goal is to help individuals understand how to budget their money, get out of debt, save money, and grasp basic investing principles. Thurman Green.
How you doing? Thank you for that, Pastor. I'm going into my slides. What should I do if I was laid off or if income is not stable? Belton talked a lot, but one of the first things, which is not on this slide, is you need to have a sound budget, which I'm gonna go in a little bit more in details at the end. You do wanna pause your debt snowball. If you're using the baby step principles, you wanna stop your debt snowball, and you need all the extra money you can right now, during this time of crisis right now. You do wanna make sure that the 4 walls are covered. Now, since your stuff is unstable, you want to make sure you have food for your family. You want to make sure you have lights on. You want to make sure you have water running. You want to make sure you have a roof over your head. and you need to have some basic, transportation in order for you to get to work. During this time of crisis, you want to make sure that you do make the minimum payments on your debt. Now, if you can't swing that, there's some alternatives that you can utilize. For one, right now, I recommend everyone call their creditors, let them know the situation. You'll be surprised of how many are willing to work with you. They're not just going to offer that for free. You have to go and make that initial contact with them, and then they'll begin to work with you. And that way you are able to massage your budget and redirect some funds. You do want to cut out all unnecessary spending from your budget. You need to think about needs versus want. During this time frame, people might don't want to look at it from this one, but it could be a blessing in disguise. Why do I say that? For one, a lot of people's not working. In other words, they're not driving to work. You have money in your budget for gas. Say, for instance, you got $300. You probably only use $100 so far. There's $200 right there. Folks who love to go out to eat and entertain, there's money saved right now. I think you've been shut down for about a month and a week or a month and a half. There's extra money in your budget that you can redirect towards paying your bills. When you look at your budget and you see you still have more expenses versus income, now it's time to think about getting a part-time job. Now, when we do part-time jobs, people turn those part-time jobs into permanent jobs. It's supposed to be part-time. Part-time means temporary, okay? The money looks so good that we continue working those jobs and forgot our basic goal. Okay, this will only be for part-time. For example, it could be 6 months or it could be 1 year, but we turn those into 5 and 6 years because we work and looking at that money. So let's work on looking at it being from part-time. If you're getting a stimulus check, you need to make sure you cover the 4 walls. Again, the 4 walls are food, utilities, shelter, and transportation. Once you got those areas covered, anything that's left over, that is considered disposable income, then you will utilize that to pay your creditors. Next thing you want to do is do not take out a payday loan. I stress, please do not take out a payday loan. Once you get in that loop, it's hard to get out of that loop. You do need to run far away from that as much as you can. It's recommended that you do not get a HELOC. A HELOC loan is a home equity line of credit. It will only cause you to get deeper in a deeper hole trying to get out of debt. As Belton mentioned during this time frame, do not stop paying your mortgage. The mortgage is considered one of the shelters of the 4 walls. Again, if you think you're still having problems paying, you need to contact your lender and work something out. I'm pretty sure they will work with you. It's recommended that you do not cash out your 401 unless you are facing foreclosure or bankruptcy. But why is that so important? Number one, if you take out $50,000, that's $50,000 you are behind. Right now, the market is down. It's okay. The market is designed to go up, and the market is also designed to go down. By being down, if you're able to put money into your 401, when it goes back up, you have more money in your account that you can choose from when it's time to retire. Okay? You really need to look at that budget real hard. If you have a budget, as I mentioned earlier, there's extra money in that budget now because we're not doing a lot of stuff we've been doing, like, going to entertainment, going to work, spending a lot of gas. So you do have money in your budget that you really need to redirect. If you do not have a budget, in order to make this financial plan work, you need to create a budget. That budget is your foundation to tell your money where to go. If you don't tell that money where to go, I guarantee it's going to leave you. You have no idea where it went. It's so important to put things on paper, okay? Once you create that budget, it needs to be a zero zero-based budget. And what do I mean by zero-based budget? If you got $2,000 a month coming in, your expenses need to show $2,000 going out. In other words, you need to sign every penny to a category. It needs to be accounted for. Try not to use miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is what's called a catch-all line. You don't know where that money is going. Oh, I'm charging to miscellaneous. But you can't justify miscellaneous. You need to sign it to something that you can actually see. Now, once you create that budget and you're still having problems, then you need to look at selling stuff. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of stuff around your house or your home or your garage that you're able to sell. Now, these days, you don't have to use eBay or Craigslist. They got these apps like Let Go, what is it, Masardis, and there's several other apps out there. You can take pictures of it, send it out there, people respond, they pay you, you ship, you pack it up, and you send it to the individuals. So those are the areas that, which is unstable.
All right, thank you, Thurman, for that. Again, if you all have any questions, please put your questions in the chat room. We want everybody to remain muted since we have quite a few people on tonight, and it'll be too noisy. So if you all will submit your questions, I will be hosting and moderating the questions in just a little while. So if you have a question for Belton or a question for Thurman or a question for all of our panelists, please feel free to go ahead and post those now and they'll get a chance to take a look at them. All right, Omar Smith. Omar graduated from the University of New Orleans with a Bachelor of Science degree in Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism Administration. Omar gained his Master of Business Administration, MBA, with a concentration in international business, finishing with a 3.64 GPA. Omar is currently a branch leader manager with SunTrust, now Trist, where he gets to work with a dynamic group of individuals who are focused on bringing clients to financial confidence. Omar has over 12 years experience in the banking industry and has successfully led teams at some of the major banks in the US, including JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. Omar is a former hospitality professor at NCCU and front office supervisor at the Residence Inn, Chapel Hill. Omar spent considerable amount of time developing deep into the credit segment after he was personally devastated by the 2008 financial crash and was able to rebuild his personal credit and wealth from his studies of the topic during that time. Omar is an expert in banking, financing, credit and budgeting, and client experience. Omar is married to his college sweetheart, Shakira, for 14 years, with whom he has 2 children. Omar is passionate about credit, budgeting, and savings, and has made numerous such presentations at Victorious Praise Church and many local schools. Without further ado, Omar.
Appreciate y'all. So one of the first things that we need to look at is credit and understanding what is credit. So first off, credit is simply when you buy stuff with financial companies' money. And in order for you to really get credit, you have to have credit. And in order for you to have credit, it goes back to the first part where you have to get it. And so it's almost like a twisted circle that you have to go through in a lot of times. And what I want you to understand is basically how credit works. There are lots of credit out there, and I'm gonna touch on that a little bit. But first off, let's look at how your credit score is made up. So first off, 35% of your credit score is driven by payment history. The next 30% of your credit score is driven by the amounts that you owe. And then the 15% is your credit history. In other words, the length of your credit, how long you've had established credit. The next two segments, which is 10% each, is the types of credit that you have and new credits, AKA getting credit, pulling credit. Now, believe it or not, that is one of the things that most people will tell you upfront, like, no, I don't want that because somebody gonna pull my credit and it gonna hurt it. Well, it only affects your credit score by 10%. So what we really need to focus on here when you're dealing with credit is the two biggest things that we're looking at: your payment history, and also we are looking at the amounts that you owe. Those two combined represent 65% of your credit score. So with that said, when we're looking at how to what to do about your credit if your income is stable, first we need to understand that your payment history and the amount that you owe are the two biggest factors that's going to drive your credit score. So with that said, you definitely need to make sure that you pay your obligations and you save. Considering that you have money that is left over, you definitely want to do that. You also want to look into small business loans if you are a small business owner. There are primarily two kinds of small business loans that is out there. You have the traditional, and then just recently we have the Paycheck Protection Program. And in my studies, I also found another one that is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. They are all offered by the SBA. Now, I will look into a little bit more on the next slide. Now, when we're looking at that last part down here, do consolidate when necessary. Now, if you look at some of the things that's going on, and if you are in the position to consolidate your debt by getting a consolidation loan, if you have multiple credit cards, and you can get a consolidation loan. If you have an already established equity line of credit that has a lower interest rate and you want to put those cards there, then that can be beneficial for you, because what that's going to do for you is it's going to cut a lot of those higher interest rates that you have on those credit cards. Next page, Pastor. All right. So what to do about your credit if you are laid off or if your income is not stable? Second, part about this here, just like I mentioned, if you have a job, you need to make sure that you understand credits. And especially if you're laid off or if your income is not flowing the way that it used to, you really need to understand credit so that you put that into perspective. Thurman spoke about this earlier, and I'll go a little bit more in details here. Call your creditors. Be prepared to stay on hold for a mighty long time if you do so. Lots of them have online access that is available. Now, when you call your creditors or you go online, deferments are available 1, 2, 3, and even up to 6 months. Now, let me speak a little bit more about that. Now, when you get your loans deferred, like Belton said, it is not a forgiveness. Typically, when you get your loans deferred, they tack it on to the end of your loan. So if your loan was scheduled to end in December of this year and you got a 3-month deferment, then that simply means that your loan is now extended until March of next year. This is the important thing about deferment, y'all. Creditors will also tell you there's not going to be any late payment fees, and they are not going to report your information to the credit bureau late. And that is as a result of COVID-19 that's going on. Now, under other circumstances, then the rules are different. But currently, y'all, deferments are available and they are set up in such a way that your credit can be protected. Now, the next part here that I put down here, it's a privilege, not a right. It's like you're having a driver's license. You know, you have to go to the DMV and actually show them that you can drive. If you don't call your creditors, or if you don't get online and reach out for some assistance, they're going to assume that you are capable of paying your obligations. And if you don't pay, and if you don't qualify for a deferment because you did not go for assistance, then that's not the great way to protect your credit. Now, let me talk a little bit more about the SBA loans, because this is really interesting. For the Paycheck Program Protection loans, it is 1% of the amount that you borrow, and the maximum term is 18 months. As a branch leader at SunTrust Now Truth, I've spent the last couple of weeks reviewing SBA PPP loans. And while I'm not going to speak specifically about my job here, I just want you all to understand the way they actually derive to the amount that you can borrow is that they take your 12-month salary and then they multiply that average monthly salary by 2.5. And then that gives you the amount that you qualify for to borrow. In essence, y'all, it is about 2.5 months worth of paycheck that you are gonna be getting. If you are a sloppy business owner, meaning that you don't keep your records straight, you probably should not go apply for a PPP loan. The thing about the PPP loan is that it is forgivable. However, you have to meet certain criteria. And if you fail to meet this certain criteria and you are already in a devastated position as a result of COVID-19, you're not only going to add an additional loan to yourself. And don't forget, this is governed through the government. So which means that unlike some other creditors, they are now able to go and confiscate your house, anything that you have of value, your bank account. Okay, so if you are not the kind of person who is effectively being able to manage your business, don't look at an SBA loan. The traditional SBA loans typically range with interest rate between 7.25 to 9.25. Now, unlike the PPP loans, the traditional SBA loans, their terms are longer. You can go up to 6 years of repayment. Then the economic injury disaster loans. These are for companies that have suffered temporary loss of revenue. If you are a nonprofit and you qualify for this, the maximum amount is $10,000. You can't get no more. If you are a for-profit company and you qualify, your interest rate is going to be 3.75. Traditionally, y'all, the SBA offer loans to small business owners that are typically having lower interest rates than they might find on the open market. Now, if you're laid off and your income is not stable and none of these are applicable to you, file for unemployment. You earned it. If you were getting a stable, I'm going to say on the table salary, that meant that your employer has already paid into the state and the federal unemployment funds. Now it's there for you. Go ahead, sign up and get the little money that is available. And like Thurman said earlier, it might be time for you to look for either a part-time job or a replacement job. Just don't sit around because unemployment do run out. And so you don't want to be sitting there expecting that, I'm getting a nice little check right now or a not so nice little check. It's going to run out. And when it runs out, then, you on your own.
Very good. So thank you, gentlemen, for that powerful presentation. And looks like we have quite a few people on. And I just want to thank you all for presenting. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to run through, like we get quite a few questions. Again, if you have a question, please feel free to post it here and I will kind of moderate the questions. I did have it, and it could very well be that, Omar, you answered it, and I was a little bit confused about the deferred payment on mortgages. But I think what you said was that it gets tacked on to the end. In other words, you defer for 3 months, you won't owe a 4-month payment.
That's
at the end
correct.
of those 3 months. It'll just get tacked on the end.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Just wanted to make sure that
No, that is separate from a forbearance, which is what Belton spoke of earlier.
Forbearance.
Forbearance is totally different from a deferment.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, very good. Thank you all for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to peek through some of these questions and begin to ask you all. Here I see one to Nathan. It says, why is chapter 13 so shunned up on in the Black community? Why I filed several years ago, the room was chock full of Caucasians. Since then, my credit score is nearly 800. My question is, chapter 13 or 7, why or why not it truly worked for us? So whoever wants to chime in on bankruptcy, should we use it, should we not use it? I remember years and years and years ago, me and my wife went through, I think, chapter 13 as well. We just got overwhelmed. And I don't know if we should have did it or if we shouldn't have did it, but we did do it. And so I guess there's reasons for it. That's why the government put it out there. And there are times where I guess you just get overwhelmed. So either one of you all jump in on that
one. While I'm not a bankruptcy expert, couple of the things that I do realize is that bankruptcy is biblical. You go back to the Bible, and the Bible talks about after 7 years, your debts would be forgiven. It is the same thing with bankruptcy. Bankruptcy lasts on your credit profile for 7 years. But I think to answer the question here partially, in the Black community, we find we're, going back to the Bible, said, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. I think a lot of times we don't truly understand the value of the things that are out there to help us even when we are in the wrong. Like for me, I told you guys of my situation in 2008. I found out during 2008 that even when the debt collectors were calling me, I found a simple statement that I could simply use to them: cease and desist. Now, once they get that statement, they have to stop calling me for a certain period of time until I can present them with a written notice. Now, that does not mean that they're going to stop all collection activities against you. But I think that bankruptcy is shunned upon because we don't truly understand, and our white counterparts have, more people talking to them about the positive things that can happen. Now, also, bankruptcy has changed over the last couple of years, especially since 2008. A lot of us think that all of our debts could be wiped away. That's not the same case anymore. And often trying to go into bankruptcy in today's economy, it might not be something that everybody will want to do. I would say, look into your options. If bankruptcy is you can call a bankruptcy attorney, and you have 30 minutes or a minute or an hour that you can talk with them. There are also debt management companies out there. They call them DMP, debt management programs. Call up those companies and see if a debt management program might be the option for you. But if it works for you and you're able to go through it and you're able to maintain the payments that are there, then you can come out on the bright side.
Real quickly, in addition to that, what I would recommend folks to do right now, if they have a chance, Google chapter 7 verses 13. When you do a chapter 7, you're pretty much doing liquidation of your assets. And in chapter 13, you're doing reorganization. So if someone get a chance, without spend a lot of time on that, just Google chapter 7 verses 13, and you can see comparison, one related to the other one.
Right. Yeah, I actually just put that link in the chat for everyone also.
Okay. Is now a good time to, look like I got a couple of questions on this, refinance your house?
If you have the income, if you qualify, it is always a good time. And to be exact, interest rates are low right now.
In addition to that, when you're saying if you have the income, he's referring to the closing costs, because you got to have that closing cost up front on that.
All right. What advice do you have for a renter who does not own a home currently? Not for sure the basis of that question, but
yeah, I know that's a pretty problem. I have some general advice. Number one, have renter's insurance.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yes.
So to be sure that if the rental house burned down, the owner of that building or house is insured. Your television and clothes are not.
That's true. That's a true statement.
So that's number one. Number two, I guess if the context of that question is, should you be looking for a house? That's a personal decision. You can't, for one might fit one, for other might not fit. If you enjoy, if you are stable and may say you enjoy not having to cut the grass, or you might enjoy not having to fix a leak, you might need to stay there for a little longer, because it's more than just a financial payment. You have obligation for maintenance and a whole lot of other things that come with a house. So that without having more than that on the question, I can't give you too many more specifics.
Right, and just one more thing into that, you need to look at how much you're paying in rent and versus how much you were paying for a house or a condo or a townhome.
All right. Hey, Omar, you can answer this one on the SBA loans. Are they still available? I know that some new money just came out. And how do you know what works for you if you are a contractor? So the PPP, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan.
So first off, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL, it is technically a grant. That one does not have to be repaid. Now, if you go to sba.gov, you're going to find information as far as the requirements for qualification and the utilization of those funds. The same thing is applicable for the Paycheck Program Protection, the Paycheck Protection Program loan. That one, however, it is repayment. However, certain amounts of the PPP loan can be forgiven. The first 8 weeks after the loan is originated, 75% of those funds must be used towards salaries. So, which is why I mentioned earlier in my presentation, if you are the business owner that doesn't keep accurate records, you will be in trouble, especially with that part of the PPP loan not being forgiven and you being on the hook to repay the 100%. What is beneficial or more beneficial for an individual? That is something that you might want to see your tax preparer or a CPA or a financial advisor about, but that's not something that, for me, a banker specifically can answer, because every individual situation is different. Now, as far as the question is concerned, are they still available? The government just funded, I think, just $310 billion on Monday for more money for the PPP program. If you have not gotten an application in, it's not late. However, I think most financial institutions will be working on applications that they've had from the first set of applications that did not get funded. But If the application site is still open, by all means, go ahead and put one in.
All right. Here is one here. This one, I'll come back to that one later. This one here, I'm not familiar with this. What do you think about the app Robinhood stock investment? Anybody familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. That's like a more lightweight, user-friendly, and they kind of really specialize in trying to get the millennial or the younger folks to get pulled in. But if anything, it's not really anything particular about that one. It's like any other investing app. It's not doing anything special. It's the fact that you need to have your priorities in line, where that you have your emergency fund, hopefully getting out of debt. And by the time you get step 3 or 4, past 3 or 4, that's when you need to worry about investing. That's just another tool.
Okay. So again, you recommend don't even think about investing until you get 3 to 6 months of savings.
Yes.
Okay.
In addition to look at it as you driving a car, you get stuck in the mud. All you're doing, you're just going back and forth. You're paying debt, you're trying to invest. You're paying debt, you're going back and forth. You're going nowhere. Whereas Belton mentioned, you need to focus on paying that debt off to get your investments. Then you can invest into that.
All right. Very good. HELOC, I guess that's home improvement line of credit.
Home equity line of credit.
Home equity line of credit.
Right.
The question is, please provide insight if one should or shouldn't use that for much needed home repairs, or what options can be used.
So equity line of credit, they are great. Typically, you're going to get an interest rate that is less than a personal loan or that which you can find on a credit card. However, there are sometimes you might get a brand new credit card that will give you 0% interest rate, but the maximum term that I'm familiar with is 21 or 24 months. Now, if you can pay off that debt in 21 or 24 months, then by all means, go the route of that credit card for 0%. If not, then equity line of credit also has tax advantage. Whenever you use the proceeds specifically to make home improvement, speak to your CPA or your tax preparer, but some of those interests can also be used for tax deferment. Lower your tax responsibility come later.
All right.
Can I add a little bit that pass before you jump to the next one?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I just want to add something to that.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of facets to it, but with all going on, what Omar just said is that specifically, it's what your game plan is. If you don't want to be using your HELOC to be buying things, preferably you want to use save up and use cash. But if you have something that you have to use, you don't want to be using your HELOC over here shopping in the mall. There's nothing associated with your house, because what you're doing is that you're mixing secured debt with unsecured debt. A credit card is unsecured debt. So worst case scenario, when things happen like COVID-19, you can't pay it, and they could come and try to harass you over the Visa card, and you like, I don't have it, bye. But if you have a few $1,000s right up on your HELOC, it could get your house. So you don't want to secure some shoes with your house. So I want to make sure that's clear.
All right. Very good. To Mr. Green and Mr. Monroe, debt consolidated sounds counterproductive to baby step number 2, snowball effect. What are your thoughts on debt consolidation highlighted by Omar?
Not to put against each other, my recommendation is create the debt snowball. You want to list all your debts with the smallest one first. And once you've done that, you want to make the minimum payment on each one of those until you pay off that first one. Once that first one continues to pay it off, you take that same money and you add it to your second one. And you keep doing that. And as you go along, you said you will build up enough momentum that you're able to pay off all your debts within a reasonable time.
And from what I just heard you all say previously, you certainly don't want to take your credit cards and consolidate them under a home equity line of credit.
Right.
Because right now your home is paying for your shoes, and they can come get your house because you ran into a COVID-19 situation and you just lost your house because of some shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, Pastor, before you move on, there's a lot to the consolidation, and it depends on where you are in your life, because while a snowball effect can be effective for people who have the money, if you're in a situation where you're having less income coming in, or you are living outside your means and you can consolidate, it doesn't necessarily have to be an equity line of credit. You can get a personal loan. That might reduce your monthly budget. And, from a budget perspective, as long as you can afford a lower monthly amount, if you consolidate that, that might be a good thing to do.
Right.
Okay.
And what that person is hitting on is a philosophical difference. Is that it's emotional side and a spiritual side, as well as a math and interest rate side. So yeah, both of them have both components, but the snowball is just a different tool as opposed to the consolidation. So with snowball, you work that exercise, that muscle of, okay, I've worked through this, I don't want to do it. Not saying you don't get it with consolidation, but either approach you use, the important thing is that you need to get out for good and fix the issue, not diagnose and fix the symptom, because you're gonna be right back in debt 2 years later, file for bankruptcy again, and then you go file for bankruptcy again, and you're right back. So you need to fix the core issue, which is overspending.
And just the last thing on that, everything we do is 80% behavioral and only 20% knowledge.
Right.
All right. How do you obtain a 401k plan if your employer doesn't offer it? What advice would you give regarding this matter if you are, I don't know what Social Security means, but
On Social Security?
okay, maybe so. So those are two separate questions.
Yeah,
Y'all jump at those. I think they call it something else instead of a 401k.
My thing is, if your job does not offer a 401, I would recommend you open up a Roth IRA to solve that issue. And put much as you can. If you can max it out, that'll be great. I think the max number is 5,500.
I think 65.
50 is 6,500, or is it 6,500 and 7,500? I forgot which one it is.
It's right up there. I think it's 6,500 if you're under 55. Don't quote me on it.
Yeah, don't quote me on it. But if your job does not offer 401k, it's recommend you open a Roth IRA. By opening up a Roth IRA, it allows you to take the taxes beforehand. So anything, all the interest that it grows, all that's free money for you when time to take it out.
Right. And just want to add to that, there's this thing called a simple IRA. It's an acronym for Save, Incentivize, Match Planning for Employees. So if you're a small business of 50 or less people, it's flipping the question around. If you're a small business and you want to give the 401k type experience, but you don't have that huge corporation, you could open up a simple IRA and supply that as a benefit to your company, to your employees. So just flipping the question around.
Should I put my student loan in forbearance?
I think that's going back to the questions: is your income stable
or not,
or if it's not? So you're still gonna. If my understanding of forbearance, if say 3 months, you're gonna have a 3 times big payment at the end of that 3 months. So if you really sincerely don't have the money, of course, yes. But if you can't pay it, continue to pay it.
Okay, very good. Listen, we are out of time. Actually, we're 8 minutes over our time. I certainly appreciate it. Someone asked, is the slides available? We will make those available to those of you that registered. We will create a place where you can download it, because we also have the presentations from last Saturday. So we're going to make them all packaged together. The presentations from the wellness on Saturday, the presentations from tonight, On this Saturday at 3, we will be doing our third segment, which will deal with security, online security, physical security. It's interesting because it got me thinking. Years ago, Thurman Green talked me into getting my
Concealed carry.
my what is that? What kind of carry?
Concealed carry permit?
My concealed carry. So he talked me into getting that. And then I went to a class and they had me and Dr. Grace standing back to back. Like, if you ever attack, you stand right here. And she said, I said, I'm 50-something years old. Ain't nobody going to attack because I put that gun in the safe. And then COVID-19 hit. I was like, hold on, these folks kind of crazy out here. Let me go open that safe up. So we're going to talk about security, physical security, as well as online security. A lot of stuff. People are working from home. Your children are in school. And we're going to also deal with some other matters on Saturday at 3 concerning security. And then finally on next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about the end times. We're going to be dealing with issues of the mark of the beast, the Antichrist, a lot of rumors and misnomers out there right now about this one and that one and how it relates. And I got some takes, and we got several others that are going to be coming on this same time next week, Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We're going to deal with the end times, Armageddon, and those types of issues. So we got 2 more segments. I hope that you all have gotten something, received something out of this. I think I'm getting some more messages. Let me see what they are. I just didn't want to mess you all up. Should we keep our money in the bank or take it out? That was the main one that I forgot to ask that one. All right. So I went to the bank and I made a deposit and it was some cash. And the lady said, thank you. She said, because these folks have been coming up here taking $20,000, $30,000 in cash out at a time. So someone wants to know, should we keep our money in the bank or take it out? Who's going to answer that one?
I think everybody probably got something on that one. You start off with you, Belton.
I would say leave it in there. I mean, because FDIC has, unless you have more than $250,000, you're insured up to that amount in one bank. Believe it or not, people do have that problem where they have more than $250,000, they have to spread it across the banks. It's actually a product to do that. But if you're under that $250,000 range, I think you're okay. But of course, I keep some cash on me anyway, so it's nothing new.
$100.
I agree with that case. I think you should leave it in. There's nothing wrong with having some cash on hand, but at your house or maybe in your safe in the event of emergency, if something were to go wrong, you were able to have some cash to utilize.
We add to the financial crisis when we pull money. If y'all notice how the stock market works, whenever there is a crash, that's because people are pulling their investments primarily. Now, if your money's in the bank, banks are not failing. So you don't run the risk currently of losing any money. And going back to keeping your money in the stock market, well, if you pull out now and you've already lost money, when the stock market rebounds, like Thurman spoke about earlier, you're going to lose out on all the money that you've lost, because everything that's going to appreciate, you're going to get back more.
Right.
The only person get hurt on the roller coaster is the one that jumps off at the top. So you just supposed to stay on there.
Very good. Go ahead.
I have one quick thing I failed to mention overall. I know we talked a lot about finances, but 2 other things that people need to be concerned about right now. And that's one, make sure you have a will, and you need to review your life insurance policies. I know we don't have enough time to go into detail, but if you don't have a will, I encourage you to execute one. You can do one free. You can get templates offline. You can go to North Carolina and look for templates for North Carolina.
All right, very good. And yeah, I really emphasize that insurance thing, especially if you're still Belton's age. You get my age, get older, it costs a little bit more money, but you still in your 30s, they give you $500,000 for 20 cents. So or
The
something
thing
close
about
to that.
that, Pastor, is as you get older, your life insurance should be going down because you hopefully, if you follow the baby steps,
You have more money. Absolutely, absolutely. So again, I think to my panelists, Thurman Green, Belton Monroe, Omar Smith, they did a phenomenal job. We will make these presentations available to you probably after we finish on next week. But I certainly thank everybody for joining in. And hopefully you all will be back on Saturday at 3 o'clock for our third of 4 presentations on COVID-19. You all have a good evening. Be blessed. And victorious praise. I'll see y'all tomorrow night. I got my presentation as well as our growth groups. Y'all take it easy.
Good night.
Good night.
Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.